Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Nerd Ledger. We're live on the internet.
That's right. I'm Chair, he's Cage, I'm Chair, and this is the Nerd Ledger. It sounds like it's on a newspaper, but it's just a name for a podcast. We don't
That's
have a
true.
newspaper.
Yeah,
We don't have a
we're not
newspaper.
writing anything. So
Yeah, I'm writing things, but nothing related to the Nerd Ledger because I don't know. Got things.
right.
Other things going on, Anyway, what are we here to talk about today, Cage?
Well, there hasn't been a lot of news, so we don't have to worry about that. So we get to talk about fun topics. Which is the thing that people have been talking about for a long time, and something that you hear people say frequently about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that the quality has declined greatly and the films are not very good anymore. And so I wanted to see how much credence there were, or there is to those claims, and come up with kind of a formulaic way to look at this, because there are a lot of different ways to look at it, and honestly, I thought that looking at it financially was a bad decision. But it's actually, there's actually quite a lot of insight to be gained from that.
No doubt about that.
And so, yeah, I mean, it is interesting, and ultimately, I'll tell everyone at the end why this discussion is meaningless.
Everything's ultimately meaningless, but yeah, please continue.
But yeah, so I could talk about kind of the methodology that I used for a lot of this stuff to kind of get to the place we're at. But before I get to all of that, right, I had you know how people are, right? We're all people. We all we grow and evolve over time, and change. And some people say they don't change, but everybody changes. You have to change. You have to adapt. You have to be better and learn more and whatever, right?
Yep.
And so at the end of our discussion last week, I rambled about how we haven't had a good X-Men movie since X2. And some people called me out on this. Some people seemed to think I never watched Days of Future Past because I didn't like it. And at the time I watched it, I didn't like it. I just remember leaving the theater really disappointed. But then I thought to myself, well, that was at a time in my life, right? 2014, when I was kind of weird about comic book movies in general. Like, I felt that Days of Future Past, even though it adheres slightly to comics, it doesn't do so in the ways I like. And I didn't appreciate all the changes. And most of all, this is something I still maintain I really hate about those movies. Mystique is not the hero of anything. Please stop making her the fucking hero. It's really annoying. I get it. They make a huge point for her to also believe she's not the hero, but I don't like it. But I rewatched Days of Future Past this week, and it's actually a really good movie. So,
good.
I've grown certainly since then, and certainly since when I was a teenager, and I was more of a nerd elitist in a lot of ways, where I kind of thought that I didn't like people encroaching on things they weren't familiar with, and this is something I've liked my whole life, and people don't like nerds, and we get bullied and all this stuff, and now the cool popular kids can just kind of be like, yeah, we're nerds too, and it's awesome, and that can be a little off-putting. But ultimately, it's a good thing. It's a good thing that people are getting into this, and it's good because then you get the MCU you have today, because it wouldn't exist if just nerds were going to watch the movies, right? I think it's a good thing, and I have stopped my gatekeeping ways many years ago. But even in 2014, I was past that stage, but I was still to the stage where I was like, well, these movies should adhere closely to what the comics were. And then I learned a lot about adaptations and storytelling and all these things, and the importance of making things work for your movie despite source material and everything else. So yes, I've grown a lot and changed. All that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, I wonder what it says about me that I rewatched Attack of the Clones, and I was like, damn, I still fucking hate this movie after all these years.
I mean, maybe that's growth. Because the first time I saw Attack of the Clones, I didn't hate it.
Yeah, yeah.
But I was also
I,
like
I,
seven
when
or
I
eight.
when I
So,
first watched that movie, I was like, wow, this is like a really cheesy, dumb movie.
dude, I wasn't as hyped about leaving that movie as I was about leaving the Phantom Menace. Like I left the Phantom Menace and I wanted to do flips off of tables. I wanted to, have a double-sided lightsaber, dude. I was so hyped watching Darth Maul fight. It was so cool. And yeah, it wasn't so much the same leaving Attack of the Clones, but I do remember like, the discussion, like my dad had said, well, the next one's not going to come out for another 3 years. So I kept trying to think of what the episode 3 would be called. And I came up with all stupid ideas because I was like 8 and everything. I just seen Attack of the Clones. So I was like, oh, maybe it's going to be called like the Clone Strike Back or some shit. Cause I was a dumb kid. But I didn't hate it. I don't know. It's I think it's different for you, right? Cause you didn't watch it till later, right?
Which ones?
Like Attack of the Clones, like
No, I watched Attack of the Clones in theaters when it came out,
Okay.
and even then, like as a kid, I was watching it, like I was just like, it's pretty cheesy, and a lot of things look bad, and I don't know, like the act, like again, that's that scene when they were on Naboo, like when you're watching it as a kid, it's so boring and awkward and cringe, and like then I'm watching it as an adult, and it's like, wow, this is really boring and awkward and cringe. So I don't know. I guess nothing really changed.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just weird. I like awkward and cringe dialogue. Maybe I just like memorizing dialogue, and so I would memorize like the whole movies. And I don't know. I was like, man, Anakin hates sand. I also hate sand. That's pretty cool.
I mean, it's because I like sand because I grew up around beaches and stuff like that. So
yeah,
just agree to disagree.
That's fair. But yeah. So growth is important, guys. Never stop growing.
Yep.
But anyway, so we'll talk about the MCU. We'll talk about whether it's fallen off, and I think the best way to determine these things is you have to put things on kind of an equal playing ground. You have to look at you can't just look at like individually each movie. You can't just say, okay, this movie got rated this and whatever, and look at a timeline of movies because it won't matter. Like you can see a trend from movie to movie, but if you want to know if it's truly fallen off, I look at this as phases. Right? So you have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. Phase 5 started, but it's there's only been 2 movies, so it's hard to tell what's what yet. My dog is barking.
Yep, that's what they do.
Yeah. And so there's also like, do you just go off of fan ratings, right? Like IMDb, like a lot of fans rate the movies. You can take the aggregate of that. Do you go off of like critic scores? Do you go off of box office? I'm not a huge fan of box office in general, just because I think that box office numbers are meaningless to a lot of people. Talk about something for a second. I'm going to let him run around.
Well, I don't really know what to talk about because I'm not boring. One, put that out there. But also, because it's easier with that to engage in this kind of dialogue when there's another person around. Because unfortunately, sometimes I have a chance to wander. Okay, and he's back.
Okay. Anyway.
All right. Anyway.
Yeah. So I mean, a lot of people do equate box office to quality, which is just not true ever. I mean, it's you can say yes, this movie made a lot of money, so it's good, and the movie is good, but it's not always a 1-to-1. It doesn't mean anything. Essentially, box office for fans should be meaningless. So if you're arguing with another fan like, oh, this movie wasn't very good, and like, but it made $1 billion. Okay, well, that doesn't make me like it.
Yeah.
Like a lot of bad movies make a lot of money, and a lot of good movies make very little money. But I do include box office just in general because there are some interesting things to be found there. And because despite what I said about fans and box office, it is what studios care about. And so if Marvel wants to see how they're performing, they're going to look at box office. But on top of all of that, right, like we're going to look at completely different things because we're fans. And this is this is fan opinion that the MCU has fallen off. But if a studio is doing this, they're not looking at what we're looking at. Studios are going to look at year over year. They're going to look at overall. People are going to always say, yeah, but the budget and marketing is a whole different bucket, accounting wise. They don't say, oh, we spent 200 million on marketing for Ant-Man and the Wasp, and the budget was 280 million, and it only made 475, which means we only made 5 million. No, that's not how that works. Like, it's a completely different accounting bucket. But that's all business random stuff. And people can say, well, if you look at box office, you have to look at inflation. No, you don't. No, you just don't. It's 15 years worth of box office. Inflation's more or less irrelevant, but to give people an idea of a fairer playing ground, what I did is I created an index. And for people who maybe don't know, an index is essentially just it's essentially a way to level the playing field between unsimilar things, right? So if you want to get an equal playing field, right, you can look at a movie's box office for that year and also look at the amount of money in the market that year, right? What is its share of that market? Or what is the average dollar, the average box office for a movie in that year, and look at an index to see where it fell. And then you can compare against all things year over year based on those indexes. And it kind of shows a more equal playing field, right? So, for example, right, if Iron Man 1 made $585 million, and in 2008, the average movie made $116 million, well, it made way more than the average, but by what proportion? And then you do that for every movie every year, and those proportions will show you overall the success of the film, right? Again, studios don't care about that. They care about box office, but they do care a little bit about how the money in the market, right? They want to get more people to buy their movie tickets than other people's movie tickets. So yeah, that's all the setup to essentially look at has the MCU fallen off, and without looking at numbers, right? Because nobody having these discussions looking at numbers. Like, do you feel the MCU is falling off, or do you feel like they're in a bad patch, or how do you feel about Marvel right now?
I really just kind of feel like that they kind of finished. I don't know. To me, it's like this. Like, sometimes, like, I can't offer any specific examples right now, but I would have to, like, do a little bit of research on this. But, like, you get cartoons, right, when you're a kid and you watch them, and, like, there's a big bad evil guy, right? And then, like, the 3 seasons of the cartoon are amazing, and they're about fighting this big bad evil guy and going on high adventure in this cartoony world, right? And then after they fight the big bad evil guy, there's still, like, this infrastructure behind this cartoon that's trying to support itself. So they try and, like, invent, like, a new reason for the cartoon to continue. And it just doesn't work. Like, sometimes it just really doesn't work. The magic isn't there anymore and it's gone. And I feel like that's kind of what's happening right now. Is that it's just...
Do you feel like it is like comic book movie fatigue, or do you feel like that's kind of a myth and it's just, if the movies were good, people would still see them?
I think it's a little bit of, if the movies were good, people will still see them. I think that it's the problem is when you go in and you see a Marvel movie, they're juggling so many different plots from so many other IPs that it really is off-putting to the vast majority of people that would come in, to see those movies. Like, it's hard to jump in now, is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Like really hard.
Yeah. It's definitely not super friendly for newcomers, right?
Yeah.
Which can certainly be a problem. Because there's a lot of people who maybe are like, man, everybody, loves these Marvel movies. Everybody talks about them, but I don't want to spend time watching, 25 movies.
Yeah.
Right. Because that is a whole task.
Yeah, it is. And, it's hard to pick up the plot points and everything like that. And there are characters you won't recognize. There's a lot, it's not easy. And I think that in combination with what I described, as in, like, they told a complete story and it's really hard to keep the magic going after telling your complete story, is just not a recipe for success in the long term. I think the recipe of success would have been like hitting the reset button on the MCU or something like that. Like, like having a universal implosion or something crazy. But me, I'm kind of an extremist when it comes to doing extreme things when it comes to storytelling. Because I just think we're at that point as a species where we can do that kind of stuff. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, certainly, certainly. So, yeah, I think ultimately, right, like the general consensus is that Marvel isn't doing great,
Mm.
and certainly fans are enjoying less. But I'll throw up some numbers here on the screen. Um, so this is I mean I already sent this. Uh, but here's some numbers on the screen, and for people who are just listening and not watching, well, don't worry, I'll tell you what people are seeing. So essentially, it has every Marvel movie here listed, from the first Iron Man in 2008 all the way through Quantumania, and then it has IMDb fan ratings and Rotten Tomatoes critic ratings, which are in a percent, and then box office for the movie, and then the index I created.
The index.
Right. The index. And really, like, it's difficult with these things because, as you work in real estate.
Yeah.
And in real estate, you don't look at averages per se. You look at medians, right? You look at the central number because it's more of an accurate representation when you have a market with super highs and super lows and outliers and things that are really going to affect your average. So use medians, right?
Yeah.
I used averages, which helps Phase 4 a little bit because No Way Home is in there.
Yeah.
But overall, like, it's an outlier.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you use the median, you come to about the same place. But this is how it looks, and so really it's astounding to me, critic scores, and I don't take critics seriously, and I don't think anybody else really takes critics seriously. So again, if you're arguing amongst your friends and you're going to use data that we're presenting, I wouldn't use the critics scores because if you ask critics, I mean, Iron Man 1 is one of the best MCU films, and I don't think anybody really has it in their top 5. Like it's definitely like, it's the start of the MCU. It's a great movie, but it's not like one of the best movies. It's certainly like the standard of a good Marvel movie, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then again, I don't take box office very seriously, but it is interesting to see, like, again, when you make an index, right, and you see that, like, a movie like Iron Man 2, which made $620 million, right, which is pretty good. Is pretty good for an early MCU film, at a 4.88, essentially meaning that it made almost 5 times what the average movie in 2010 made. And then you have Black Widow at a 4.16 at only 379 million, and it's because in 2021 people weren't really going to see movies very much, which is why I created the index, because it's hard to look at a COVID time period for movies and say it's equal to any other time period. Yeah. Right? Like there's always these other factors, and even this isn't perfect. It's not perfect, but it's the closest way possible to say, with anything else going on, because maybe people started going to the movies more between 2014 and 2018 for other reasons, right? People have more money to spend, better economy, this and that, and then now economy's dropping, so people are going to go, like, the best way to eke those things out is to look at the dollars in the market and how much the movie made in comparison to it. I mean, pretty standard stuff. But a lot of people don't look at context with numbers. People just assume numbers are always right and statistics are always correct and whatever, and that's not true. And so I compiled all this and then made some charts and graphs and stuff. And so essentially I aggregated also the scores, and according to fan ratings, you could say, yes, there has been a big fall off with Phase 4. But not only is Phase 4 the largest phase, it has the most movies in it. It has the most bad movies in it, right? And this is also coming off the back of Phase 3, where you have the best movies.
Yeah.
right? Like nobody's gonna look at Phase 3, right, where you have Endgame and Infinity War and even Thor Ragnarok and Doctor Strange and Civil War and all these movies, right, that you get, and then you're gonna see Black Widow and Eternals and Thor Love and Thunder. Nobody's gonna equate those things, right? Like you're obviously gonna be much more disappointed with those films coming off the back of Phase 3. I think the best way to look at Phase 4 is to look at Phase 1, honestly, right? Phase 1 is the start of the MCU. Phase 1 is when Marvel had to lay out their plans and get to where they wanted to go. So there were going to be rough patches. That's why the Incredible Hulk didn't make much money. That's why, even Thor and Captain America, the first Avenger, didn't do amazing. But they did good enough to get to the Avengers, which did great, right? $1.5 billion at the box office, right? A huge success. Everybody loves it. Everybody rates it. It's great. But it took time to get there. And it's going to take time with Phase 4 as well. I mean, I know it's over, but Phase 4 is essentially starting over after Endgame, right? We're starting over. You know, obviously you still had Far From Home, which came out after Endgame, which is part of Phase 3, but we're starting over. We're starting from scratch.
Yeah.
Chris Evans is gone. Robert Downey Jr. is gone. Scarlett Johansson's gone. Like these are staples of the Marvel universe since 2008 right and on. Like these people are gone. We're starting over again. So Phase 4 is still lower than Phase 1. But and not just in fan score, in critic score as well, but in box office it's not lower, it's higher. And again, I hate to break this to people, but that's what Disney's going to look at.
Yeah.
And when you look at the index, it's also it's the best performing phase on the index. And when you look at a trend like that, they're going to say, well, we're still capturing all the money in the market. Like we're in more so now than before, which is a huge plus for Disney. So fans will say, yes, it's fallen off, but Disney's going to say, well, we're not making as much dollar-wise as we were before, but nobody is, right? Nobody's making as much as they used to. So we're still doing well relatively to what's out there. And that's kind of how businesses look at things, to be honest. Obviously, you have budgets and you want to hit your targets and everything else, but you're also going to look at what's out there, right? If people stop grocery shopping, grocery chains are going to look at the money in the market, right? That's a very important thing to look at. You want to know what your share of the market is. And Marvel's share is growing.
Yeah, and I think another thing that you and I discussed was potentially earlier is that the diluting effect that shows on Disney Plus may have on the movies writ large.
Yep.
That's that's something you and I will probably have discussed in another episode. But that factors into it too, into the new phase, and they may have shot themselves in the foot by making so much content so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, well, and you see that, right? You see that even with Phase 4, right? You ramp up the content so much, right? It's kind of crazy, right? Like, I mean, Phase 1 was 4 years, right? 2008 to 2012. It had, 6 movies? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? 6 movies? I don't know if Iron Man 3, I don't think Iron Man 3 is a part of that. It had 6 movies, right? It culminated at the Avengers, right? It took 4 years. Phase 4 took from 2021 to 2022. It took 2 years, and it had 2, 4, 6, 7, 8 movies. 2 extra movies, in 2 years less, right? It just is what it is, right? It has Marvel's output has been much greater, and this doesn't include those those MCU TV shows, Loki, Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, Falcon and Winter Soldier. These shows that attempt to bridge the gap between what's happening in the MCU between movies, right? Like things that you wouldn't maybe ordinarily see or you'd see in a flashback or something. These shows exist to introduce you to characters or bridge gaps between things. but we had this discussion: do those get included in Phase 4? Right, like because if they do, it's not gonna lower the score. It's gonna stay about the same, right? But some shows are rated really high. Other shows, I mean, no show is ranked lower than She-Hulk at a 5.2, which a lot of people will say, yeah, that's because She-Hulk is awful and whatever, right?
Yeah.
We talked extensively about it already, and our reviews are out there. But again, that's gonna come down to fan opinion, and if you listen to fans, there are a group of fans who really hate anything that Marvel is doing in a quote unquote progressive sense. There are people who call it the MCU. Again, there's no place for those conversations. It's just people being angry about things that are irrelevant. Like
yeah, like the more and more that's been really making me mad. Like this dumb cultural bullshit. Like it really is just a bunch of dumb bullshit. It really doesn't matter at the end of the day. These things usually end up going nowhere. There's no major policy changes. There's nothing that really impacts anyone anywhere. It's just really dumb. And it's yeah, I'm gonna get sick of talking about it. To be honest, like people complain about it for no reason, and it doesn't really go anywhere or lead to anything. It's just a signal to other people that you are like them, and I don't know why you'd want to do that.
It's a great way to get views, I think, right? Like
yeah,
like it's a great way for people on the internet to get clicks because they're gonna post really clickbaity titles and then just rage about things, and people for some reason enjoy that. But yeah, I mean. For us, there's no conversation there. Like, whenever we talk about things like that, it's only to bring up how other people are talking about that. We don't ever have a discussion where we're like, oh my god, I hate how like they victimized this woman or like they did that, like really annoying. This like overly like this conversation just about overly progressive things. Like it's okay. Women exist, gay people exist, trans people exist, and it's okay to see them in media.
Yeah, we're
like
just talking about it now. It's like
yeah.
So, anyway, I don't think that really applies because again, I just think that it's a combination of a lot of things that's leading to the detraction of Marvel, like just as a major cultural influence. And I think that we're kind of all waiting for the next king to appear that's going to capture our movie magic wonder minds for like the next 10 years. I really think that's what's going on because I think that the new Star Wars is we're supposed to be it, but then they dropped the ball in such a horrendous way. Like it's just not really I don't know why they did it the way that they did it. And it flopped.
I mean, it's unfortunate because studios are creatively bankrupt, right? Like they don't have ideas really. Like everything is a sequel. Everything's part of a franchise. Like there's nothing really overly original anymore. I mean, you can create original things within franchises, but again, I mean, it's all part of this franchise, and that's great, right? Like Marvel has shown people we can keep people's attention spans over the course of 30 movies or whatever, right? But not every studio is going to be able to do that. Not everybody wants to buy into that, right? Like the brilliance of like the Lord of the Rings is, well, they're long movies, but I can spend 10 hours and watch that. Like it's a great fun experience. Nobody can watch all of Marvel's movies in a day, right? And then when you take into account the shows and everything else, right? I don't think the shows are quote unquote essential watching, but they almost are starting to be, especially when you have Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, where you have a post-credit scene with Loki and Owen Wilson's character watching a play which is directly from Loki. Like people aren't gonna know who Owen Wilson's character is if they haven't watched it. They'll be confused by that post-credit scene. Like, and anything that causes that confusion is a problem to me, right? Like, you shouldn't have to watch everything to understand something. You should be able to watch like Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and only really have to have seen the first Black Panther movie. But if you've seen everything else, it'll enhance your experience. But if it's the case where you haven't watched everything else, you've only watched the first Black Panther, and now you're watching Black Panther 2 and you can't understand anything, well, that's a huge problem, right? And I'm not
Yeah.
saying that's the case with that movie. I'm saying it should never be the case. But unfortunately, in this
That's the
world,
case. That's the case for a lot of the newer Marvel movies. Like
yeah,
it's just if you're not 100, if you weren't on board, like the perfect example is Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Like if you didn't watch critical movies throughout the MCU, you'll have no idea what's going on. You won't. Like you'll be lost. You'll be confused and like you'll be estranged and it'll take you out of the movie and you'll be spending your entire time in your head trying to catch up with everything. Like they reference like other movies that didn't even come before that one. They reference other movies that weren't even the first Doctor Strange. So it's and if you didn't watch WandaVision, you wouldn't know what the fuck's going on or why she has kids. It's
yeah,
like that's a real problem. That's a real problem. It really is.
yeah. I mean, it informs her entire arc in that movie. If you
Yeah.
don't watch WandaVision, you like sure, it's not like you'll be there like what? Like you'll be like that a little bit, but mostly you'll be like okay, she thinks she has kids in this other universe and she cares about them, but why is she acting this way, right? Because you don't know that she's actually lived that life. Like you only get the inference that she knows that in another life, in another universe, she has kids.
Yeah.
So much less clear, and that's kind of how it is with these franchise movies. And hopefully, like, it's hard to say this hopefully thing, but like the truth is that there are other movies that come out, right? There just are. But if you look at the index of those things, they're not getting their share of the market, right? They're not getting their fair share,
Yeah.
and that's because people are more interested in these big blockbuster movies. I mean, that's why Fast and Furious has 10 movies now.
Yeah.
Right? Like I haven't watched all of them, but from what I hear, it got pretty ridiculous after like the 5th one. So, yeah, but if people can keep making money off of these things, they will, and that's why Marvel will go on and on and on and on. People might expect this thing to end sometime soon. It's not going, because people will continue to see the movies. But yeah, so the reason why we didn't include the shows is because then it's like, do we include Inhumans? Do we include Daredevil? Do we include Luke Cage and all those shows from Netflix, because they technically tied into the MCU a little bit? Do we include Agents of Shield? And for all that, it's kind of hard, and then it's even harder to try to give it a money number, right? I mean, sure, you can look at like viewership and subscriptions and different things, but we don't have the insight into where those numbers directly come from.
Yeah, especially with streaming. It's dark. It's a brave new world right now, definitely for sure. And here's the thing about companies. Like you understand, like Disney, like they're all the fucking same. They only care about one thing: making money. That's why they exist. It's just there's no other reason. That's the only thing they'll ever care about. Like they don't care about you and I recently saw Guardians of the Galaxy 3. You and I thought it was actually pretty intense and really deep and emotional in like ways that other movies weren't. And we thought that was really brave. I guarantee you, not a single fucking person at Disney, like in the upper echelons, thought that. They thought, oh, this movie's gonna make a lot of money.
Well, yeah, and I mean it is already,
It is,
right? Like
it is, yeah.
it's been in theaters for 3 weeks. It's at $664 million. It's going to continue making money, right? Like over the next 3 weeks that it remains in theaters, and it'll probably get up to 800, 900 million, which is really good for a Marvel film these days. But again, it doesn't equate to anything, because let me put this into real context for you, that the box office doesn't mean a movie is good, because Thor: Love and Thunder made $859 million. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness made almost $1 billion. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I think we would both agree Shang-Chi is better than both of those movies, and it only made $430 million.
Mm-hmm.
And then to put that a little bit into a different context, I think most people would agree that Into the Spider-Verse is one of the best comic book related things to ever come out.
Yeah.
That movie made $375 million in the
Good chunk of change.
That's like nothing.
Nothing.
Like for a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
Like the only movie from Marvel that's made less than that is The Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
Everything else is made more, even during COVID times, right?
Yeah.
So Marvel, if they produced that, like if Disney had released that independent of Sony, they wouldn't say necessarily, "Oh, this movie people loved, it was successful," unless they understand how fans think. It was successful. Obviously, it didn't have a huge budget. It did have a big budget. I mean, animation is not cheap,
Mm.
but it's much cheaper than CG. But yeah, no, box office numbers again. Like that's why I feel like they tell you very little about the quality of something, but it is what studios care about. Which, if you look at these graphs, these two over here on the right, the IMDb, which are the fan ratings, and the Rotten Tomato critic scores, you can see they're trending down, right? Saying the MCU is doing much worse than it used to. Fans aren't feeling it as much as they used to. Critics aren't feeling it as much as they used to.
Yeah.
But the two charts on the left, which are trending up, are the financial charts. The charts that Disney cares about. The charts that Disney Marvel will say, doesn't matter. They don't have to like our movies as much. They're still watching them.
Yeah. And I think that's the problem with that is that eventually, like, when one movie flop, like, eventually you're going to start getting flops, and then eventually they start building up in time because the quality is no longer there, and eventually audiences do take the power back.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're absolutely right. Like the problem with this is the mistake that companies make is they'll see this small drop off. They'll say we're still trending up, but we're dropping off. But they'll interpret it the way I just said. People aren't enjoying our stuff as much, but they're still paying to go see it. There's a lag effect here where this line will start to drop because people are, this is a 1-to-1, right? People are rating lower these things, even though the trend is up. But in the next phases, that's where you'll see the drop continue if it's going to. And it's in the best interest of people like Kevin Feige and other people who make big choices at Disney to say, well, people didn't like this as much. We're establishing our world, we're reestablishing it, whatever. So it's time to pick things up again, right? And eventually what you should see in charts like this is the economics effect. You'll see peaks and valleys, right? I mean, we have 4 phases so far, but what you'll start to see is you'll see rises and dips, and hopefully those dips are very small dips, and that'll continue over time. That's what they're hoping for. But if they don't correct this now, then in 2 years when we're talking about this still, we can say for sure if they have or haven't fallen off. It's hard to say they have and that they will when you have movies like Fantastic Four coming out, and other things like Deadpool 3 and stuff. Like I can't imagine people aren't going to go see those and hopefully enjoy them.
Yeah, especially Deadpool 3. But the problem is, like, it's easy to take movies that are already existing, like Daredevil. Like, it's such low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Like it's so easy for them to just snag Daredevil and like have something that works.
Yeah, but if the quality drops, people will turn against that too, right? I mean, it's hard to say. It's hard to say that with certainty because the fact is we're talking about things as they should be and theoretically are, but in the real world, things don't always work that way. Right? Like we view things from what we know, right? We view things from, well, if someone doesn't like something, they'll stop buying it, and etc. And in general, that's true. But for things like this, right, where fans are so devout in a lot of ways, it takes a lot longer for them to really stop putting money in.
To get snapped. Like, that's the thing. Like, they just snap. Like, when the consumer snaps.
Yeah, what you really are seeing, really, is you're going to see people who go to the movies, whether they like them or not, and will continue to go to them, whether they like them or not, and then just complain about it. This is the Star Wars fan effect, right? Star Wars fans, I've never met people who hate Star Wars more than Star Wars fans. They will just complain about everything in the prequels, everything in the sequels, but they've seen them all. And they talk about it. Like, I get it. Of course, you're a fan. You're going to go see them. But are you really a fan if you don't even like any of them?
Yeah.
If you don't like,
and
a
two,
third
we need
of,
to just. It is strange because we need to discern between between MCU fan and between Marvel fan. We'll
Yeah.
start 1 second. I'm gonna do my stuff really quick.
No, it's all good. Yeah, yeah. I mean, you're right because there are comic book fans, and then there are MCU fans, and then there are Marvel fans, and then there are DC fans, right? And then there are other comic book fans, like people who are fans of Image Comics or Kaboom or Dynamite, whatever. Like all these other comic book indie stuff that enjoy shows like Invincible or Paper Girls or any of those other independent Lock and Key and things of that nature. But they're far less numbered. Like there's far less Image Comics fans or indie comic fans than there
Yeah.
are Marvel fans, right?
Yeah.
So you can break all
Oh,
those
but
things down.
Invincible is doing pretty good though, at least.
Well, yeah, I mean, anything with Robert Kirkman attached is, yeah, it is the thing is most comic book fans are also Marvel or DC fans, right? And so you have that target market, but Marvel has grown so far beyond that most people who go see Marvel movies have never read a comic book in their life, which is fine. There's not a problem with that at all. In fact, that's what Disney wants. um, so yeah, but then you have people who the thing is the MCU, it doesn't really matter anymore because they have such a chokehold on Marvel that essentially no other studio has that much power. I mean, they bought Fox, so there's no Fox with Fantastic Four and X-Men anymore, right? And they have a deal with Sony with Spider-Man, so they don't really care that much, I think. Like, Sony's still going to try to do Venom, and they're still going to try to do El Muerto. I mean, that got put on hold, apparently. And they have Kraven the Hunter coming out this October, which will tie in nicely to the release of Spider-Man 2 because Kraven the Hunter is also in that. Sorry to spoil that for anybody who didn't see the PlayStation event today. But yeah, did you watch the PlayStation event?
Yeah, there were a couple things. I think for me, the most important thing was Dragon's Dogma 2. I'm really excited. The first Dragon's Dogma was such an amazing game. It was very unique among all like the kind of big monster fighting Japanese or JRPG style games, like just overly hyped fantasy games.
Yeah.
Like really hit that like like when you're playing a warrior, like knight shield guy, like you really hit that fantasy button really hard. But for me, like I like playing wizards and spellcasters and stuff like that, and like you could really do that too, and it was really fun. So I'm
There
excited. I'm really
was
excited for that.
there was one game, I don't remember what it's called, that looked really good. It was like the one, oh well, you have 66 days or whatever. You know what I'm talking about?
But no, I didn't watch the whole thing. I saw trailers and stuff though. Like I knew it usually feeds like I'm on gaming subreddits and stuff like that. So like the news eventually funnels this way to me. But
Yeah. I mean, the Spider-Man gameplay looked really good, except
yeah, I
for
saw there was a lot of that news.
except for the
A lot of that
water.
news.
The
Yeah,
water the water graphics don't look great,
yeah,
which is understandable because water is very hard to code. But so are doors, okay, guys? So are doors. Um, so yeah, but there's definitely like this market of nerds out there,
yep,
whether they're Marvel or DC or whatever. And I think with James Gunn at DC, you'll see those box offices starting to tick up eventually as well. Hopefully, maybe, who knows? I mean, Shazam made very little money, sad to say. But you kind of
yeah,
expect that. The Flash is being hyped as like the greatest thing ever, and
yeah,
before tickets went on sale, I saw news articles like, oh, it's projected to make all this money, like more money than Guardians 3 and all this stuff, and I'm like, yo, tickets aren't even on sale. How are you projecting this shit? Like, obviously they have their internal metrics or whatever, but I don't understand how it can make more money than Guardians 3 when I went to the opening of Guardians 3, and there were like 12 showtimes for standard for that movie. And for The Flash, there's 3. I don't get it. Why is there only
yeah.
3?
Dude, I don't know. Like, I'm just gonna go see the Flash. I'm not gonna be happy about it, but I'm gonna go see it, and hopefully it'll be good. And if it's awful, like, fuck, we know who to blame. Like, that's a free couple of hours of content for you and me.
Yeah.
We know
Yeah.
what's going on. It's just the Warner Brothers continually, just the cycle continues forever. Dynamite blowing up, harvesting gold with the dynamite. It's no good.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, I think this is the part where I tell you none of this matters because ultimately it's just gonna come down to your own opinion. Like, it doesn't
Yeah, like
matter.
like everything, like I could be saying that when I go into Marvel movies, I just don't feel like there's a lot of creative mojo like there used to be, like behind them. That's just all I feel. I have that sinking feeling, but I could be completely wrong. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, I can sit here and tell you, based on the numbers, it's not fallen off yet for sure. But it's also like, you know, we don't know what's going on necessarily, but money wise, it's not fallen off. I mean, it's doing pretty well. Um, so yeah, but ultimately, none of that matters because again, it's up to individuals how they feel about these things. So, just like how we rank them, okay, guys. Um, this is something that nerds love to do. We love to give our rankings. Um, and if you're looking at fan scores, I'd say the top five is not too far off. Um, I think it's weird that Endgame and Infinity War have the same scores. Um, but maybe fans just overall don't know how to agree on these things. I think critics are absolutely wrong. I think Infinity War is better than Endgame. What's your hot take?
Um, it was all good. That's just like the thing when it comes down to it at the end of the day. Like it could have been one, could have been a little bit better than the other. Sorry, one sec. I gotta finish something really quick.
No, that's all
But
good.
it's hard to just like capture my feelings on this because like I remember going to the theater and enjoying it and seeing it, and it was fantastic. And I didn't have a bad time. And there are some movies I've seen where I had a horrible time. And now when I go to see the MCU movies, I kind of have a meh time. And I'm just wondering how long it's going to be until I start having a horrible time. Like what is that creative? When is that creative bleed out going to start really showing that this is a corpse?
Yeah. Well, I think for me, like the interesting thing is like most of the time, like going into the movies, right? Like I'm a person where I don't get overly excited about things in general, but like going into the movies, like once I'm sitting in the chair and like everything starts to roll, like I feel excited. Like I feel like it's still like an event to go to Marvel movies. Uh, where what you're saying comes into play is like leaving, right? You don't leave feeling as like, oh holy shit, what's coming next? What's gonna happen? Like, and I think like they're trying to they're still trying to capture that with post credit scenes, but like even those have way fallen off. Like the post credit scenes don't hype me for the next thing. Like I'm just like, oh okay, they're doing that. So yeah, I mean it is an interesting thing, for sure. But um, this might tell people for sure, like if they believe that the MCU has fallen off, the fact that five of the bottom six ranked fan movies are Phase 4 and Phase 5 films. I mean, I guess that maybe people will think it's fallen off. I mean, the bottom six being Wakanda Forever, Black Widow, Incredible Hulk, Eternals, Thor: Love and Thunder, and Quantumania. That's tough. That's tough. I don't think Wakanda Forever belongs down, but and Quantumania being one of the lowest ranked Marvel films. You liked Quantumania quite a lot, didn't you?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the kind of science fiction-y, Star Wars-y aspects of it. Yeah, it was to me, it was just really personally enjoyable.
Yeah, and a lot of people I talked to really liked it as well. I left feeling like it was okay. Like I didn't feel like it was anything extraordinary. It was a little bit disappointing from what the hype going into it, but most of the hype was around Kang anyway, and Kang was great. So
He was
despite,
before,
I
despite
mean,
every,
the
despite
perform
everything that,
this is the thing. Like
yeah.
I'm not afraid to say it. Jonathan Majors is an incredible actor. He's probably a terrible person, but to be honest, most actors are probably not great people. There's some good ones, I'm sure, but man, I sound like Donald Trump when I say. But yeah, I don't know. Like if there's more news on Jonathan Majors, don't worry, guys. We'll talk about it whenever it comes out. But yeah, the other interesting thing is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 being like third of all time. Very interesting. Maybe it's like because it's new and like
Yeah, it was such a it was such a smash. Like, you see, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was the third best of all time, or Guardians of the Guardians of the
Three.
Galaxy 3. Oh, yeah.
Eh,
Oh well, that's is what it is. Like, it's a really good movie, and there's a lot of hype around it and everything like
well, I
that.
mean, and
And
it's the
hopefully,
best Marvel movie in a long, long time.
yeah, probably
So
since I really like the new Black Panther 2 a lot, so that was there
yeah,
too.
yeah. That one's based on fan ratings, bottom 6, which
Ooh.
I think is utter shite. It's definitely better
Yeah,
than
for
that.
Wakanda Forever is at the bottom.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry, I'm just pulling up because the stream audio, it's not off, but like there is a delay because it's like
yeah.
stream and different from us talking on Discord. And yeah, that's really a shame that it's at the bottom because I actually thought it was a really cool movie.
Well, even the first one, Black Panther 1 being in the middle of the pack, kind of. I think it should be closer to the top.
Yeah,
That's my personal opinion, obviously. And
yeah.
I think
First Black Panther was great.
yeah, I mean, there's not even with this list just based on rankings, there's not a whole lot I'd move around. I'd probably swap Black Panther with Iron Man, and I'd probably like move Guardians Volume 2 down a bit, like
Yeah,
quite a bit. But other than that, like Wakanda Forever should be higher, but everything else is about where it should be.
yeah,
I also don't think Quantumania deserves to be that low, but it wasn't. All the Ant-Mans to me just kind of belong like together.
yeah.
Like they should be like where Ant-Man and the Wasp is. They should all just be under that. So yeah, I don't know, but I think most fans can agree on Love and Thunder. It's not the best, and it might just be the worst. Some
Yep.
people would say Eternals is the worst. Other people would say Black Widow is the worst, and the Incredible Hulk is the worst. But they're in there. They're the bottom 5. Like they all kind of deserve their place there. But even then, like there's still people who will enjoy those movies, right? And that's
Yeah.
okay too. So yeah, it is what it is. There's not a whole lot more to not annoy me, Mr. Computer. It made a do-do-do-do because I have a notification. Why? But yeah. Any other thoughts on this topic?
I mean, I think we covered it all pretty good.
Yeah, we kind of beat the horse to death.
Yeah, we just.
But I still think critics' scores are dog shit.
Yeah, well, and like you said, it comes down to personal preference is the most important thing. Nothing else.
Yep.
If you like movies, and you like to go see them. And it's just for me when I've been seeing Marvel movies, it just the writers seem very confused and all over the place, and like dialogue's very like it's the meme of it. It's the meme of itself. Like
Yeah, I do wonder if there's like less direction from the top, or if it's just like because they feel like they're starting over, right?
yeah,
If that plays a big part in it. But like for Thor 4, like it shouldn't have been as itself as it was. Like I didn't hate Thor 4. I thought it was a good rom-com, but I don't think it was a good Marvel movie.
yeah. Yeah, I didn't really like that new Thor very much. The more I think about it, the more I thought how weird it was, and also like with freaking I just don't like it when the direct, like same thing with Black Adam. Like I hate it when they go on social media and they fucking suck their own dick. Like Taika Waititi was sucking his own dick about Thor: Love and Thunder like
Was he
so
really?
much. Yeah, he was like leading up. He thought it was going to be like the best Marvel movie to release today.
James Gunn has been doing that a lot.
No,
Like he did that with Shazam. He did it with Guardians. He's doing it with The Flash. Like he really hypes up those projects. But I mean, maybe he genuinely loves them. But he's also said he's gonna stop responding to so many rumors to like disprove them because I don't know. I didn't read the article. I just saw the headline and because he does that a lot. Like he'll see like people will ask him like, oh, did you see this like casting rumor about Superman? And he's always like, that's great, but it's not true. And so he said he's gonna stop doing it probably for his own mental health because again, people run rampant with these shits.
Yeah, social media like that's another thing we probably I don't know we need to talk about like a net negative. Slowly, people are coming around to the realization that maybe it's not all it's cracked up to be.
No, I mean, I think everybody gets to the point, right? Like, well, maybe not everybody. This is okay for a very specific set of people who have what's the word? Insecurities. Eventually, will log into social media, and just kind of think, wow, what a waste of fucking time. Like,
Yeah.
you people with insecurities, like, they'll go to social media looking for specific things, right? Looking for people to, looking for attention, looking for people to tell them that they're not a waste of space and worthless and whatever else. Like, the things you feel about yourself, like, you want to feel better, so you go to social media, which is an oxymoron, right? Like, you're never gonna feel better. Eventually you just realize nobody cares, everybody's awful, and you're on your own. And if you want to do shit with your life, you got to kind of just do it yourself, because most people, they don't care about you. I'm sorry, it's just true. Like, find the good ones who do care, like Chair. He's a great friend. I know he cares. He reaches out to me all the time. He's a good friend.
Happy Monday.
Yeah.
Happy Friday.
And there are good people, but you're not gonna find them on social media.
No, like, I'm like, into the thing is, like, you will find good people on social media, but they don't fucking post. They're like me. They just wander and they get information that they want, and they leave because they understand how toxic it is.
I posted a lot when I was depressed.
Same, like, when you try to get to fights with people, you try to convince them that you're right or something like that.
Oh, I never argue. Yeah. I stopped arguing with people during middle school.
And to, like, for me, the worst part is, like, on video games, when you're anonymous and you get to treat people like shit. I've never been, like, a racist or sexist to anybody, but I would say, like, like, just really mean shit to them. Like, how do you figure out the process of breathing, or other, like, mean things, like,
gamer talk, like, but
I would be really mean sometimes. Like, I'd be very overbearing and very rude and very mean sometimes. Like, and you try not to be, but it just it brings it out of you.
Yeah.
Anyway, I gotta go eat dinner.
Yeah. All good. But
it was a good talk.
It was a good talk. I hope everybody enjoyed.
Let us know what you think. Contact us if you have any opinions. Is the MCU dying? Are we full of shit? Do you think that they are just they had this creative bleed off and now it's really starting to show? Do you think it's petering out and, like, it just won't be as big as before, which is hard to do because it's Disney, and man, like, they had a whole section of California Adventure dedicated around Marvel.
Yeah. Do you think we're industry plants? I mean, we're just here to corrupt you into thinking the MCU is great, even though if
I'm an industry plant, I'm getting so fucking unpaid, bro. Like, this is so not okay. I wish I was an industry plant.
We're getting fired.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Subscribe, like, follow, click the buttons. We love you or not. I don't know. Goodbye.